there?
We didn't see bodies. We saw a good deal of blood around, and very much the evidence of the devastation that took place this morning. The whole courtyard, the whole section that was the recreational yard, looks like it was a tent city set up, kind that you see in the ghetto sections of, say, Saigon or Da Nang. And of course, all of that was mowed down this morning. The trenches were built all along inside one courtroom or courtyard, and apparently the inmates had thought that they would get down in these trenches and cover themselves up with blankets to avoid the tear gas. And I guess it happened probably too fast for that to happen. And of course, the commissioner showed us various things and talked about his feelings about what had happened in there. He thought that there was no other choice but to do that, and said he had no second thoughts about it.
Did you see any of the injured at all?
No, we were just showing the physical layout, the grounds where the men were made to strip today so that they could check to see if there was any contraband or if they had any weapons or anything like that.
Did you talk to anyone other than Commissioner Oswald?
We talked to only prison people. I don't know their names, but only prison people, and it was...
By that you mean guards, I take it.
Prison officials above guards. We talked to no guards. They were around. Some of them were cleaning up the area. State troopers were looking around to see if they could find weapons, we were told. We went into one of the cell block areas that was where the windows were very much had been smashed out and so on, where they barricaded themselves apparently for the first couple of days, and a lot of tear gas still there. We weren't able to stay in very long, as a matter of fact, because the tear gas was still bad enough so it was impossible to breathe for any length of time.
There were reports earlier that perhaps a few inmates had still been holding out in some areas of the prison.
We were told by one of the commissioner's officials or assistant commissioners that there were 8 unaccounted for, that when they did the roll call today they had 8 people that they couldn't find. He seemed not to be very seriously concerned about that. I kind of did a look around wondering whether one of them was going to come out of the woodwork and go at us, but that didn't happen, and I guess they must think that they're holed up someplace in the bowels of the prison and not of immediate danger to any guards or newsmen.
But for most intents and purposes, the prison officials have control again.
They seem to have control. Every time that we would go beyond where the prison officials were, they would come to us and they'd say, oh, this isn't a secure area. And a moment later, they would be leading us into the area that we had just encroached upon. So apparently, everything is fairly well under control. We heard some yelling from some of the inmates, but we were told that these were inmates who never had been a part of the action. So where the other ones were, I really don't know. They showed us some makeshift weapons, forks that were filed down and things like that. There was also what looked like a rocket launcher there. They identified it as that and said it was never used, but it was out in the middle of this yard. And we saw where the hostages had been held. We saw the uniforms that they had been wearing before they were put into the prison uniforms. And, it's all on the film.
Did they take you to the prison hospital at all?
Jim McGocklyn, news director of WKBW in Buffalo, one of the pool reporters who went into Attica Correctional Facility after the disturbance was quelled. What did you see, Jim?
Well, Commissioner Dunbar and Commissioner Oswald showed us mainly the yards where the 1,500 or so prisoners had lived for 4.5, 5 days. It was just a mess. That's the only way I can describe it. There's what looked like a sloppy tent city, the tents being made of sheets and towels and blankets. There's a large trench dug. It was probably looked like a slit trench or a World War I trench, 3 or 4 feet deep. Part of this was used as a latrine, and I understand that the recalcitrant inmates attempted or planned to use this as a weapon of defense to get in there when the assault came. But there were clothes and shoes and underwear littered the area because when this was over, when the assault was over, they had all the prisoners stripped down to nothing, and they were searched and brought back into the cells that had been secured, at least those areas, those cell blocks that were livable.
Did you see any prisoners while you were in there?
Yes, across the courtyard you can see there are 3 tiers of cell blocks. You can see them in there with their arms dangling out through the bars. You can see them through the bars. It's probably 150, 200 yards from us. They were yelling and making noises, yelling at one guard in particular, and one of them shouted, "We want water," but that's about it as far as the other prisoners are concerned. I understand that they plan tomorrow to transfer many prisoners out of here because they just don't have the facilities now to accommodate all the prisoners.
Al Bruce, the UPI Bureau Manager in Buffalo, has been covering this disturbance here at Attica Correctional Facility since it broke out on Thursday. Al, did you get any indication of what it was like inside from your tour?
On the inside right now, it looks like a major battleground. It looks as though the whole place has been through a full-scale war. There's litter all over the place. There are blood stains on the concrete walkways in there. It just looks like total war in there.
Did you get any indication from the prisoners that you could see at a distance what their mood is?
Well, the only thing we had was for a brief time the prisoners were shouting things. We were too far away to hear exactly what they were saying. They did obviously know that we were newsmen. Everybody was carrying pads and there were TV cameras and what have you. They did know that we were newsmen and they were trying to get our attention.
Did you talk to any prison officials? What are their feelings?
Yes, we talked with Commissioner Oswald and Deputy Commissioner Dunbar. Dunbar took us on the tour of the prison. Both of them at this point feel that despite the fact that there were several deaths that occurred here, it was something that was absolutely necessary. They felt that they could not delay it any further because the prisoners were becoming better armed. Which brings up another point, by the way. We saw a lot of armaments in there that the prisoners had made in the shops. There were spears, there were long knives, and Molotov cocktails and things like this. And it was becoming evident to them that the prisoners were becoming better armed and better entrenched in the cell block D area as time went on.
Did you see the area where the hostages were, in fact, murdered? The 9 of them that were killed.
Yes, we did. In fact, something that the commissioner just told us a short time ago was that 2 of the hostages were killed before today. The area where most of the hostages were killed, where 4 were held up today as the helicopters went in. This is the main cell block D area. It's a courtyard area where it's just totally littered with clothing right now. This is where most of the prisoners gave up. And of course, as they gave up, they were stripped down and searched before being sent into new cells.
What area were the 28-odd prisoners who were killed? What area were they in?
This is pretty much of a scattered area, and it takes in much of the 4 courtyards. There was apparently sort of a mass panic in there. One of the prisoners that was killed was shot down by a high-powered rifle as he was trying to slit the throat of a guard. This is as the initial assault began, and he was cut down before killing the guard, but he did inflict a cut of about 3 to 4 inches on the guard's throat. The guard is still alive.
Was there any indication on which prisoners were shot at, sort of with the high-powered rifle, which were obviously of 28 of 1,000 odd who were killed, they were pretty selective.
The prisoners that were shot at, the only ones that were shot at were the prisoners that were trying to take some steps, trying to kill the hostages or fight back with the state police and National Guardsmen and what have you. The ones who did not fight were not fired upon or anything like that.
You saw some prisoners while you were in there, Al. Did you get any impression of what their morale was? Did you talk to any prison officials? Did you get their feelings?